Hello and welcome to another episode of Picture Perfect Greek. Today, without so many pictures, because it's one thing we have to do. We have to have a brief look at the Greek letters. But the good news is there are fewer Greek letters than there are English ones. Greek has only 24 letters, while in the English alphabet we have 26. So you have to learn 2 letters less. And also, we will do it in stages. We begin with the easy ones, and then we see the little more difficult ones, the little more advanced ones. So don't worry, it will all be very easy, and we will have a lot of fun doing this. Okay, so here we have the letters. Let's look at them. These are the common letters which are common between English and Greek, and they are more or less pronounced in the same way. And you see that there are already lots of letters, so we don't have to learn so much. The differences are not that many. Much of Greek writing you can just recognize by looking at the letters which you already know. So the first one is the A, which is in Greek always pronounced A, like ascending, for example, in English, or annotation. So this A is an A. English is very inconsistent, right? Sometimes it's an A, sometimes it's an A. In Greek, it's always an A. So it's an annotation, ascend, and whatever other words begin with an A in English. The next one is the E, which is always pronounced E in Greek, like in English. Exit, again, English has different ways of pronouncing this letter, but in Greek we stick with E, like exit or entertainment, right? This is the kind of E. Then we have the E. The I is an E, like we say inside in English, inside. So this kind of E is what you have here with the I. Then we have the K. The K is just a K, no difference. The M, the N, these are all the same. The O is an O, so it is not pronounced O, right? In English you would say O, but in Greek you stop at the first part at the O. So it's an O, like you say in English, above, this kind of O. Then we have the T. The T is exactly the same. And then the Y is a little different because it's an E sound. It's just the same in modern Greek like the I, with a few exceptions. We will see the exceptions later. When it's together with another vowel, then it changes its character. But generally, if you see it stand alone or with other consonants, then it is an E. So again, like you say, exit, the E at the end, this could be written with this, or inside, you could write it with a Y and it would be pronounced exactly the same. And then you have the Z at the end. This is a Z sound, Z or Z. And this is like you would say zebra, for example. Zebra would be written in Greek with the same letter Z. Okay, so here we have now our first 2 letters that we want to learn. One is the K, one is the L. And you see at the top, I write them for you, the K in big and small. In Greek, often the letters look a little different from in big and small. And this is the same in English, right? If you think of the E or the A, they look very different if they're written as capital letters or as small letters. And so the same is true here. The K, big and small, looks relatively similar. The L, the so-called lambda, looks a little different. The capital L is like an A without the horizontal line, and the small L then looks again a little different. So try to remember how these letters look, and we will practice them a lot. In the end, you will be able to recognize them very easily. So let us look first at a real word, kilo, which in English we use for abbreviation for kilogram, right? I have 2 kilos of oranges. And this kilo also exists in Greek, and there it's called kilo. And here is how you write kilo, with a capital K at the beginning or with a small k at the beginning. And in brackets, I have also written how you would write it in English or in German. You would say kilo. So this is just to help you a little with the pronunciation. But remember, it's not kilo or anything like that. The E is always an E sound, like an inside, and the O is always an O sound. So it is kilo. So now there's another feature there. The first time you see it, it might seem confusing, but actually it's very helpful for the beginner because we have these tone marks, which is this little line, this little sign there over the O. And there's only one of them, so don't worry, they are not different ones. Ancient Greek had many different tone signs, but now in modern Greek we have only one of them. So whether it's a small line or a dot or a little triangle, this depends on the font, but it always has exactly the same meaning. And the meaning is it tells you where to put the stress when you pronounce the word, because this word, for example, has two vowels, so it could be kilo or it could be kilo. And how do you know if it's kilo or kilo? You know because you look at this stress mark. And so in this case, you see that the stress mark is on the O, so it's pronounced kilo. And this is very nice because all Greek words that have more than one vowel where you can put the tone have a tone mark, and so you always know how to pronounce them. And it's also very important in Greek because sometimes you have the same letters with a different stress and then it's different meanings. So you have to be careful where the stress goes. And one example I give you, down here on the left side, we have Allah and we have Allah. The first is Allah, the second is Allah, depending on where the stress is. Try to say it yourself. Allah is the left one, Allah, and then the right one is Allah, Allah. And these have totally different meanings. Allah means different ones. So you say, here are some cars and here are some different cars, or here are some apples and here are some different apples. This is what Allah means, different ones. And then we have Allah, and Allah just means but. Like we say, this is an apple, but it looks more like an orange. So in the sense of but, the word but is Allah. And you are not allowed to confuse them. If you say Allah instead of Allah, nobody will understand what you're saying. So you really have to try to get the stress right, but it is easy because you have all these stress marks, which in other languages you don't have. Okay, to practice a little, here is a word. Try to pronounce it yourself. Kala. Kala. Kala means good. Kalos is good, in case you have heard it from other foreign words in English, sometimes have kalo as a component in them. And notice also that when you write it in capital letters, fully capital, like it would be perhaps on a sign, on a shop sign or something, you would have kala in capital letters. Then you don't have the stress mark, the tone mark. You don't write these tone marks on capital letters, you write them only on small letters. This is why when you have a word that is entirely in capital letters, you don't have the stress mark, so then you have to guess which word is meant. And finally, to practice again, here is another word. Try to read this one. I'm sure it is familiar to you, although it looks perhaps a little strange. Try it. It is, of course, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola in Greek, because the O is not an O, it's an O, so it would be Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola. That's it. This was everything you need to know about stress marks, about capital and small letters, about the letters K and L, which are called kappa and lambda, and a few examples of words that contain these letters. You see, it's not so difficult, and next time we will talk about some more letters. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.